The Atacama Desert's merciless sun beat down on Dr. Sarah Chen as she rechecked the coordinates in her father's weathered journal for the 100th time. 20 years of academic ridicule, of being the crazy Chen's daughter, had led to this moment. The GPS coordinates matched perfectly with the strange mathematical sequences her father had scribbled in the margins, equations that had made no sense until last week's breakthrough. Dr. Chen. Miguel, her lead excavator, waved frantically from the dig site. "You need to see this. Now." Sarah tucked the journal into her jacket pocket and jogged across the cracked earth, her boots kicking up clouds of rust-colored dust. The morning's dig had revealed something that definitely wasn't geological, a metallic surface with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, like oil on water but impossibly precise. "We've tried every dating method," Dr. Rebecca Torres, her skeptical colleague, said, handing Sarah a tablet displaying the analysis. "The results are impossible. The metal isn't just ancient. According to this, it predates human civilization. And the composition, it doesn't match any known element on Earth." Sarah's hands trembled as she traced the patterns with her fingers. They resembled hieroglyphs but incorporated elements she'd never seen in any ancient writing system. More importantly, they matched the drawings in her father's journal perfectly, drawings he'd made 2 decades ago before his disappearance. "Pack up the equipment," a commanding voice interrupted. Sarah turned to find men in black suits approaching, led by a silver-haired woman who radiated authority. "This site is now under the control of Helios Corporation." "Like hell it is." Sarah stepped forward, clutching her father's journal. "We have all the proper permits, all the documentation." The woman smiled thinly. "Which have just been revoked. National security concerns." She handed Sarah a document bearing multiple government seals. "You have 1 hour to clear the site." Before Sarah could argue further, a high-pitched whine emanated from the excavation. The air crackled with electricity, and every piece of electronic equipment within 50 meters sparked and died simultaneously. The metallic surface began to glow with an inner light, patterns shifting faster now, like a computer display running through boot sequences. "Everyone back," Sarah shouted, but Dr. Torres moved closer, mesmerized by the changing patterns. The air around her shimmered like a heat mirage. And then, impossibility. She began to sink into the solid metal surface as if it had become liquid. Sarah lunged forward, grabbing Rebecca's arm. The metal felt alive under her touch, and for a moment, something vast and ancient brushed against her consciousness, a presence that felt both familiar and utterly alien. With help from Miguel, she pulled Rebecca free, but not before the metal had left intricate burns in a spiral pattern up her arm. The Helios woman's composure cracked. "Contain it. Now." But before her teams could act, every phone, radio, and satellite link in the camp crackled to life with the same message, broadcast in multiple languages. "To the inhabitants of Sol 3, designation, Earth, the quarantine of your system has ended. You have achieved sufficient technological advancement to be worth harvesting. The Void Collective approaches. Surrender your world and knowledge, or face extinction. You have 14 days to comply." The message repeated as Sarah helped Rebecca into the medical tent. The burns on her colleague's arm were changing, the spiral pattern now resembling the same symbols they'd found on the metal surface. Rebecca regained consciousness, her eyes wide with terror. "I saw them," she whispered, gripping Sarah's hand. "In the metal. They showed me. We weren't alone. We were never alone. Your father, he found one of their archives. They're coming back, but not to help us. They'd been waiting, watching. Everything we've built, every advancement we've made, it was all part of their plan." The Helios woman entered the tent, her earlier hostility replaced with urgent purpose. "Dr. Chen, I believe we owe you and your father an apology. Those coordinates in his journal, are there more?" Sarah clutched the journal tighter. "Why should I tell you anything?" "Because The woman's voice softened, revealing genuine fear. Your father worked with us before he disappeared. What you found isn't just a random artifact. It's part of a weapons testing facility, one of many your father was helping us locate. And now we know why they were built. Above them, the sky rippled as something massive dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter's orbit. The alien fleet had arrived early. In the excavation pit, the metal surface had begun to pulse with a steady rhythm, like a beacon. Or a warning. Sarah looked at her father's journal, then at Rebecca's transformed arm, and finally at the Helios woman. 2 decades of searching for answers about her father's disappearance had led to this moment. She'd wanted to prove him right, but not like this. Get me a secure line to whatever's left of our orbital defenses, she said, and a team that can dig faster than your corporation. The facility isn't just marking time until they arrive. She opened the journal to a page she'd memorized years ago, covered in complex equations, and a single phrase repeated over and over. Remember why we forgot. Military floodlights bathed the excavation site in harsh white light as Dr. James Martinez approached the exposed facility entrance. His quantum computers had been shipped in from DARPA's hidden labs, each unit worth more than the entire dig site's budget. A dozen soldiers stood guard, their weapons trained on the mysterious metal surface that had already claimed 3 lives when an overconfident technician tried forcing his way in. The patterns aren't random, Sarah explained, pointing to the shifting symbols that danced across the metal surface. They changed when we tried accessing them with different people. Watch. She pressed her palm against the surface. The symbols rearranged themselves, forming concentric circles that pulsed with an electric blue light. James connected his equipment, fingers flying across holographic displays. It's generating quantum fields I've never seen before. Almost like it's trying to communicate. But the patterns, they're not just code. They're adapting to our attempts to understand them. The facility's entrance suddenly rised open with a sound like sighing metal, revealing a darkened corridor that seemed to absorb the floodlights. Sarah's heart jumped when she saw the handprint scanner inside. It matched the diagram in her father's journal perfectly, down to the strange crystalline growths around its edges. Dr. Chen, the Helios supervisor, called out, her voice tight with controlled panic. We're detecting massive energy spikes from Mars. The Void Collective just destroyed our defense colonies. 30,000 people, just gone. Sarah placed her hand on the scanner, trying to steady her trembling fingers. The corridor illuminated, revealing walls covered in shifting text that seemed to write and rewrite itself endlessly. A holographic interface materialized in the air before them, displaying what looked like a puzzle sequence. Geometric shapes that folded through impossible dimensions. It's testing us, James realized, studying the patterns with intense concentration. These sequences, they're like the bedtime stories in your father's journal. The ones he used to tell you about the stars that danced in patterns. Sarah froze. She'd never shared those stories with anyone. Not even her closest colleagues knew about the mathematical games her father had taught her, disguised as children's tales. How do you know about that? Before James could answer, the facility's AI awakened. A voice spoke in an ancient language that somehow everyone present understood perfectly. DNA sequence recognized. Chen, Michael. Access granted to progeny. Security protocols modified based on current threat assessment. Screens materialized around them, showing real-time footage of the Void Collective's fleet tearing through Mars defenses with weapons that bent space itself. The AI continued. Primary directive. Evaluate current humanity's capacity for weapon synthesis. Begin testing sequence. Caution. Neural adaptation required. The puzzles changed, becoming more complex, each solution revealing glimpses of devastating weapons and defense systems that defied modern physics. But the AI wouldn't grant access without proof that they could understand the underlying principles. These aren't just tests, Sarah realized, solving the sequence that her father had disguised as a childhood game about falling stars. They're trying to determine if we're responsible enough to handle the technology. Each solution isn't just about understanding. It's about proving we can handle the consequences. James worked alongside her, his expertise with quantum systems proving invaluable. But something about his familiarity with the technology nagged at Sarah's suspicions. He solved puzzles too quickly, as if he'd seen similar patterns before. The facility shuddered as the AI announced, "Warning, Void Collective vessels approaching Mars defense perimeter. Time to Earth impact, 72 hours. Current human technological capability assessment. Insufficient for direct confrontation. We don't have time for tests." The Helios supervisor insisted, drawing her weapon. "Override the system. Force it open." "Wait," James said, his expression troubled as he studied a new pattern sequence. "The puzzles aren't just about weapons. Look at the patterns. They're teaching us something about the facility's creators, about why they left this all behind. These aren't just security measures. They're a message." Sarah completed another sequence, and a new hologram appeared, a recording of her father, looking exactly as she remembered him from the day he disappeared. "Sarah, if you're seeing this, I found the truth. About humanity's past. About why we had to forget. The weapons aren't the point. It's why we chose to lock them away. The facility isn't just testing your intelligence. It's testing your heart. Because the power to destroy worlds means nothing without the wisdom to choose not to." The walls trembled as more of the facility awakened, responding to their progress. The race to understand their own forgotten legacy had begun. Above them, Mars burned as humanity's first line of defense crumbled before an enemy that had spent millennia preparing for this moment. The real question wasn't whether they could unlock the weapons in time. It was whether they should. Deep in the facility's archives, holographic records painted a picture that shattered everything Sarah thought she knew about human history. The images showed humanity's ancient war with the Void Collective, not as primitive cave dwellers, but as masters of technology so advanced it resembled magic. Ships that could fold space, weapons that rewrote the laws of physics, cities that spanned entire solar systems. 6 sites, Sarah read from the decoded data, her voice hoarse from hours of discovery. Father found 3 before he disappeared. The coordinates are all here, but the other facilities were destroyed, James finished, pulling up classified files on his quantum tablet. Industrial accidents, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, all carefully covered up. He met her eyes. "My corporation didn't just find them. We were trying to protect them. But the Void Collective had agents everywhere." Warning klaxons blared through the facility. The Void Collective had breached Mars' outer defense ring, using weapons that turned gravity itself into a weapon. Through the facility's sensors, they watched in horror as the red planet's surface cracked under their assault. "They've evolved," the AI warned, its voice carrying new urgency. "Current weapon systems calculating as 47% effective against observed void technology. Initiating emergency protocols. Warning, mental augmentation required for advanced system access." Sarah's hands flew over the holographic interface, solving increasingly complex equations that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her mind could process. Each solution unlocked more of the facility's capabilities, but also revealed darker truths. The ancient humans hadn't just hidden their weapons, they'd deliberately erased their own technological knowledge. "Multiple incoming," a soldier shouted from the security station. "Void ships entering Earth's atmosphere. They're not waiting for their ultimatum to expire." James grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward a deeper chamber. "We need to move. They're not just attacking military targets, they're hunting for the facilities. They remember what we were capable of." The ground shook as alien weapons impacted nearby, testing the facility's defenses. Ancient shields activated automatically, layers of quantum-locked energy that barely held against weapons specifically designed to breach them. "They remember us," Sarah realized, watching the attack pattern through the facility sensors. All this time, they were preparing to face humanity's weapons. Every advance we made, they were studying us, waiting until we reached a level of technology they could harvest. But we're not the same humans they fought before. The facility rumbled as more systems came online, responding to Sarah's insight. The AI's voice held a note of surprise. Analyzing current human neural patterns. Creative potential exceeding original baseline by 43%. Unlocking advanced synthesis protocols. A new interface emerged from the walls, pulsing with possibilities that made Sarah's mind burn. Through the neural link, she understood. Modern humanity's primitive understanding of physics meant they could imagine solutions the ancients thought impossible. The other facilities, Sarah said, working frantically as more void ships entered the atmosphere. We don't need to find them. They're going to find us. The attacks, they're waking them up. Around the world, buried deep beneath earth and sea, humanity's ancient arsenal began to stir. In the Mariana Trench, Chinese submarines detected massive energy signatures. Under the ice of Antarctica, research stations reported mysterious signals. In the heart of the Sahara, something ancient began to pulse. The weapons of the past were awakening, waiting to be remade by the children of their forgotten creators. But as Sarah delved deeper into the facility's archives, she discovered a terrible truth. The price of power wasn't just knowledge. It was memory itself. And humanity would have to decide how much of itself it was willing to sacrifice to survive. Neural interfaces crowned the heads of soldiers and scientists like crystalline diadems, each one a masterpiece of hybrid technology, ancient designs recreated with modern materials. In the facility's central chamber, thought became reality as human creativity merged with forgotten science. The patterns, Sarah muttered, her mind linked to the weapons forged through a web of quantum entanglement. They're not just blueprints. They're alive. Through the interface, she watched as human imagination reshaped forgotten weapons into something new, something that even the facility's AI struggled to categorize. Lieutenant Maria Rivera, a young tactical officer with an unprecedented aptitude for the neural interface, suddenly screamed. Blood trickled from her nose as her neural pattern overloaded. Too much, she gasped, clawing at the crystalline crown. The knowledge, it burns, like trying to pour an ocean into a teacup. James rushed to disconnect her, his own interface pulsing with warning lights. Our brains aren't designed to process this much information. We're adapting, but too slowly. Each breakthrough damages the neural pathways a little more. He studied the medical readouts with growing concern. We're asking human minds to comprehend concepts they were never meant to contain. The AI's warnings became increasingly urgent. Void collective fleet accelerating. Estimated arrival, 36 hours. Current weapons adaptation rate, insufficient for survival probability. Recommendation, increase neural load despite biological damage risk. Sarah pushed harder, ignoring the burning sensation that felt like molten metal being poured into her skull. Modern physics said her latest weapon design was impossible, which meant the Void Collective wouldn't have defenses against it. Reality itself bent around her thoughts as she forced concepts that shouldn't exist into forms that couldn't work. Their primitive understanding is their strength, the eye observed, its tone carrying something close to awe. They imagine solutions we believed impossible because they don't know what can't be done. More neural interfaces failed. 3 scientists collapsed from mental strain, their minds burned out by trying to comprehend weapons that operated in 11 dimensions. But those who adapted began creating hybrid weapons that merged ancient principles with modern innovation, producing results that surprised even the facility's ancient builders. Space-time distortion detected. The AI announced, void ships entering lunar orbit. Warning, detected weapons systems exceed predicted technological evolution curve. Through tears of pain, Sarah saw her father's research in a new light. The bedtime stories, the mathematical games, the physics puzzles. He hadn't just found the facilities. He'd been preparing humanity for this moment, seeding ideas through stories and games, preparing their minds for concepts they would need to grasp. The weapons aren't the test, she realized. blood dripping from her own nose as she forced her mind to encompass impossible geometries. We are, not just our minds, our spirits, our will to endure. The pain, it's not a flaw in the system, it's a feature. Around her, the facility thrummed with power as human creativity rewrote the rules of what was possible. Ancient weapon designs twisted into new forms as modern minds, unconstrained by proper physics, reshaped them according to dreams and nightmares instead of rules and laws. Lieutenant Rivera struggled back to her feet, wiping blood from her face. "The pain lets us know we're pushing the boundaries," she said, reaching for her interface again. "It tells us we're going beyond what we're supposed to be capable of." The next wave was coming, but this time, humanity would face it with weapons forged from imagination itself, weapons that worked precisely because they shouldn't. The question was whether their minds would survive long enough to use them. Mexico City burned under an alien sky. Void weapons turned every piece of technology against its users. Cars became heat-seeking missiles. Power lines writhed like serpents hunting prey, and communication networks broadcast frequencies that shattered minds. 8 million people screamed as their own creations betrayed them. "Shield matrix activated," Sarah announced. Her consciousness spread across the facility's systems like a spiderweb of light. The protective barrier she'd adapted from ancient designs rippled across the city skyline, a shimmering dome of pure possibility. Where it touched corrupted technology, order returned. The city's heartbeat steadied. But success came at a terrible cost. Within hours, every major nation demanded access to the ancient defenses. Political alliances fractured as governments realized the power at stake. China threatened military action. Russia mobilized its nuclear arsenal. The European Union splintered along old fault lines. "You don't understand what you're asking," James argued with the United Nations Emergency Council, his hologram flickering with barely contained fury. "This technology requires sacrifice. It changes those who use it. We can't just hand it out like party favors." The Void Collective's message interrupted worldwide broadcasts, their alien thoughts translated into every human language simultaneously. "Your weapons are known. Your defenses are anticipated. We have spent millennia preparing for this moment. Surrender the facilities, and your species will be preserved as a client race. Resist, and face extinction." In the neural interface, Sarah encountered something unexpected. A consciousness within the facility's systems. Not the AI, but something more familiar. Her father's digital ghost, preserved in the moment he discovered the truth about humanity's past. "The choice is yours," his echo whispered, carrying all the love and regret she remembered from childhood. "My memories hold the key to unlocking the facility's full potential, but accessing them will destroy what remains of me. Everything I am, everything I discovered, will be consumed by the weapons forge." James revealed himself then, not just a scientist, but part of a secret society that had guarded humanity's true history. "Your father knew this day would come," he said softly. "Every story he told you, every game he taught you, he was preparing you for this choice." Sarah looked at the burning city, at the frightened faces of humanity's defenders wearing neural interfaces that slowly killed them. The Void Collective had spent millennia preparing to face humanity's ancient weapons. They weren't prepared for what humanity had become. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, tears falling as she made her choice. The facility surged with power as her father's stored memories integrated with its systems, transforming grief into strength. His last gift to humanity wasn't knowledge. It was the wisdom to use it. Above, the Void Fleet approached Earth in formations that defied traditional space combat doctrine. They remembered what humanity had been, had prepared for every weapon in their ancient arsenal. But they hadn't prepared for weapons forged from human dreams. For defenses built from imagination instead of physics. For a species that had evolved not just technologically, but spiritually. They remembered what humanity had been. They were about to discover what humanity had become. And Sarah, her father's last memories burning through her neural interface, like stars going nova, would show them the difference. Ancient facilities erupted from Earth's hidden places, each awakening shaking the planet to its core. In the Mariana Trench, a quantum forge rose from depths that had never known light. Inside Mount Kilimanjaro, a weapons testing ground older than human memory stirred to life. Beneath the Antarctic ice, a defense matrix that could rewrite the laws of physics began its boot sequence. Each activation required a sacrifice. Dr. Yuki Tanaka lost 20 years of memories to activate the Pacific facility, forgetting her children's births, but remembering how to forge weapons from quantum foam. Professor Heinrich Weber gave up everything he knew about theoretical physics to power the European defense grid, his brilliant mind becoming a blank slate that could imagine new impossibilities. The price of power, James explained as another scientist lost decades of knowledge to activate a dimensional anchor. The ancients knew that knowledge without wisdom would destroy us. Every weapon requires us to give up something we thought we needed. Sarah coordinated the global awakening from the primary facility, her consciousness expanded by her father's sacrificed memories. Through the neural interface, she felt every activation like a new star being born in her mind. The Void Collective's response was immediate, offering Earth's governments a devil's bargain. Deactivate the facilities. Their message echoed across all frequencies. Surrender them intact, and your world will be spared. Continue this resistance, and we will do worse than kill you. We will unmake you. Several nations wavered. China threatened to bomb their facility rather than risk total war. Russia's facility operators were mysteriously assassinated. India's government collapsed as different factions fought for control of their ancient arsenal. Then Sarah found it, the truth hidden in her father's stored memories, encoded in fragments of knowledge that only made sense when humanity faced extinction. We're not their descendants, she broadcasted globally, her voice carrying the weight of forgotten millennia. We're what they chose to become. The ancient humans, at the height of their power, had seen their future: endless war, technological devastation, the death of everything that made them human. So they made an impossible choice. They erased their own technological knowledge, buried their weapons, chose to start over as primitive beings who would evolve along a different path. Not because they were weak, but because they were wise enough to know that power without progress was a dead end. The Void Collective isn't alien, Sarah revealed, sharing her father's last memories with everyone linked to the neural network. They're the ones who refused to give up the weapons, who chose power over progress. They're what we could have become. Understanding transformed fear into determination. Humanity united not to reclaim their past, but to defend their hard-won evolution. They had become something the ancients never imagined. Beings capable of wielding impossible weapons precisely because they didn't know they were impossible. The facilities pulsed with power as humanity's defenders chose to sacrifice their own memories to power weapons that might save billions. Knowledge given up so wisdom might prevail. The old making way for the new. Above, the Void Collective's fleet descended. The final battle for humanity's soul was about to begin. And this time, humanity wasn't fighting to reclaim what they had lost. They were fighting to protect what they had become. Reality fractured like broken glass as weapons that defied comprehension clashed in Earth's orbit. The Void Collective deployed technology perfected over millennia. Ships that could rewrite causality, weapons that turned space itself into shrapnel, shields that existed in all possible quantum states simultaneously. Humanity responded with weapons born from imagination, unfettered by proper physics. A teenager in Mumbai, who had never learned that time was supposed to flow in one direction, created temporal mines that trapped enemy ships in loops of possibility. A grandmother in Seattle, whose neural interface interpreted advanced physics as knitting patterns, devised shields that redirected entropy itself. They don't understand, Sarah realized, watching the Void Collective's growing confusion through the facility sensors. We're not fighting with logic anymore. We're fighting with dreams, with stories, with impossible ideas that work precisely because we don't know better. The neural network linking Earth's defenders hummed with concepts that shouldn't exist. A jazz musician in New Orleans turned sound waves into solid matter, creating crystalline structures that trapped void ships in frozen music. A chef in Paris developed weapons that treated space-time like ingredients, folding reality the way she once folded dough. Their technology evolved. James observed from the Antarctic facility, his voice tight with pain as his neural interface burned new pathways through his mind. But their thinking didn't. They're still using the old rules, still thinking like the ancients. The Void Collective's ships warped space-time in ways that should have annihilated Earth's defenders. But humanity's weapons existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, because no one had told their creators that was impossible. They fought with technology they barely understood but wielded with fierce imagination. A 6-year-old girl's crayon drawing of a force field, interpreted by the neural interface, became an impenetrable defense grid that protected North America. A poet's metaphors about starlight and memory transformed into weapons that could rewrite an enemy ship's history. A dancer's understanding of movement became the basis for propulsion systems that treated gravity like a partner instead of a law. Sarah felt the strain as she coordinated the global defense, her father's memories burning like stars in her mind. Modern humans couldn't match the Void Collective's technological mastery, but their creativity, their ability to think beyond established limits, made them devastating opponents. Warning, the AI announced as the battle reached its crescendo. Enemy deploying final contingency weapons. Probability of survival. Calculating. The sky burned with weapons that should have annihilated Earth's forces. The Void Collective, in their desperation, broke laws of physics that even they had considered immutable. Space twisted. Time shattered. Reality itself began to unravel. But humanity's defenders, armed with technology they barely understood but wielded with fierce imagination, pushed back. They weren't fighting to reclaim their ancient glory. They weren't fighting because they understood the weapons they used. They were fighting to protect what they'd become. Something new, something unexpected, something wonderful. And as the battle reached its final phase, as reality itself groaned under the weight of impossible weapons wielded by improbable warriors, Sarah realized the truth that had been hidden in her father's memories all along. The ancients hadn't buried their weapons to protect the galaxy from their power. They had buried them to give humanity the chance to become something greater than weapons could ever be. In the final desperate hours, as reality trembled under the weight of impossible weapons, Sarah realized what her father had discovered in his last moments. The true purpose of the neural interfaces wasn't to control the ancient weapons. It was to create something the ancients never could. Everyone, she broadcasted globally through the neural network, her consciousness expanded by sacrifice and necessity. Link your minds, not to the facilities, to each other. The weapons aren't the answer. We are. Across Earth, thousands of minds connected, each maintaining their unique perspective while joining a greater whole. A street sweeper in Lagos shared his understanding of patterns with a quantum physicist in Beijing. A kindergarten teacher in Toronto merged her grasp of human development with a general's tactical knowledge. Something the ancient builders never achieved emerged from the chaos. Unity without uniformity. Connection without conformity. A collective consciousness that amplified creativity instead of crushing it. The Void Collective's dimensional barriers shattered, revealing their true form at last. Twisted reflections of humanity's past, beings who had chosen power over progress until they became living weapons. Through the group consciousness, Sarah felt billions of minds recoil in shared understanding. "We see you," she proclaimed, her voice carrying the thoughts of all humanity. "We see what we chose not to become, what we could have been if we had chosen differently." Humanity's weapons transformed, powered not by sacrificed memories but by shared dreams. The Void Collective's technological superiority meant nothing against weapons fueled by billions of imaginations working in harmony. Children's drawings became battle plans. Love songs became targeting algorithms. Hope itself became a weapon more powerful than any physics could explain. Their defeat wasn't just military, it was philosophical. The ancient builders' greatest fear had been losing their humanity to their weapons. Their greatest hope had been that their descendants would find a better way. As the Void Collective retreated, their fleet in ruins, Sarah felt her father's final memory surface in the facility systems. His discovery that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was the ability to choose a different path, to forget power in favor of progress, to evolve not toward perfection, but toward possibility. The facilities powered down, their purpose fulfilled. But humanity's neural link remained, transformed from a weapon into something else entirely, a bridge between minds that celebrated differences instead of erasing them. They were no longer the galaxy's greatest weapons makers. They had become its greatest dreamers. In the decades that followed, humanity would rebuild. The neural link would evolve, becoming not a tool of war, but a means of sharing knowledge, dreams, and wisdom. The ancient weapons would be studied but never used, preserved as reminders of a path not taken. And Sarah, watching a new generation grow up under peaceful skies, finally understood her father's last message. Remember why we forgot hadn't been a warning about the weapons. It had been a reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in remembering its power. It was in choosing, again and again, to become something better than power could ever create. The end.